Welcome. Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles, and welcome at Family Office and to my members of SFO Continuity. This is exciting. And by the way, many of you, thank you for your kind comments. Yes, it's freezing and wintry and snowy. That's why you've been seeing some of my thought leadership with my cowboy hat on outside. But I'm going to be in the sunshine because next week I head to Miami, where I'm speaking at Uncorrelated Miami and effectively leading breakouts for family offices. For those of you that may hear this live, and our family offices that are going to be in South Florida next week, beginning on the 27th, meaning a Monday, simply hit me up, DM or direct text, or reach out and let me know. Would be great to have an opportunity to catch up. And one of the subjects we're going to be talking about, and one that I have been pontificating a lot more lately, and here's today's subject: own, don't rent. Why billionaires and others are building private AI networks within their wealth management and their family office operations, and why. So I think you're going to find that the vast majority of family offices are built effectively pre-AI. Their thinking, their technology, their platform, even their systems. Now, that's a deeper conversation. It's not as simple as patching it up. I think it's more complex than that, but in some ways, maybe not quite as complex as I maybe am making it out to be. But sometimes it is better to design that part of it up from scratch. And why you do want to own, and this is going to be very important. A lot of you are not familiar with this. And by own, I don't mean create your own competitor to OpenAI. We know that would take a tremendous amount of money. So what do I mean by that? Well, within 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to find out. So I think we're standing at a pivotal moment in wealth management, investing in family offices. AI is no longer an emerging trend. It's reshaping industries and creating, in my opinion, new paradigms of power. And yes, let's be blunt, AI is power. You're going to see that play out within the next 1 to 4 years. So most haven't even realized that. The real advantage isn't using AI. Like I said, it's going to be owning and building around it. Every time, this is important, every time you use public AI platforms, I do too, and they're awesome. ChatGPT, Claude, you're unknowingly training models that your competitors are going to access and benefit from. So it's more than really just a privacy issue. It's an erosion. I don't care, SFO, MFO, anyone. It's an erosion of your competitive edge. Think about it. Your strategies, your insights, your approach become part of a shared knowledge pool accessible to anyone who's willing to pay for it. So top tier families and definitely institutions are taking a different approach. They're not just using AI, they're building their private infrastructure. They're assembling all things we're going to talk about today with a great guest. Elite machine learning teams developing private data centers, not as hard as that sounds, and developing proprietary AI agents. And oh, are you going to see that word, AI agents, be a big thing a little more so the second half of this year? So we have so much to talk about. And really, those families are truly creating, well, I think this word is a little overused, but a moat, a competitive moat. So others are not going to so easily replicate it. So I think this is really an exciting time, and I'm very, very excited to have a very special guest who's an expert on AI and a machine learning builder, and that is Ian Cook. Ian Cook, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Angelo. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. And as I've been hyperactive in AI, originally as an investor in public and private markets, going to Silicon Valley, traveling the world, but thinking of it as AI is really fundamentally changing the game at a family office, and investing is maybe going to be the anchor and the most important part of it, but it's a deeper perspective. Part of it goes into governmental and society that we're probably not going to quite get that philosophical today. We're probably going to go a little bit more into at least the nuts and bolts. So Why don't I start with you, and I maybe laid the groundwork for that part already, But why are private AI networks becoming, I'm going to use the word essential for families and family offices?
Sure. It's a great question. I think of this as kind of a spectrum. As you mentioned, if you just go out to the web, pay your $20, go to ChatGPT and start giving them information, uploading documents, sharing things, they have the right to retain a lot of that information and to use it in the future. They use it for understanding how you behave, understanding the kinds of context you give them, the things that you like and don't like. That means you're contributing to them building something and on their own, and you're providing your information and you're actually paying them for the opportunity to do that. There's another step you can take. A lot of people don't know about this. You can go to an enterprise contract with a lot of these companies and they agree not to use that information. That's fine. You can then say, look, I'm going to share documents with you. I'm going to share information. You don't retain it. You don't use it to train your models, but you're still dependent on that system being available, being up, being successful, and using their infrastructure. What I think a lot of places are starting to realize is they don't want to be dependent on that. So then you can start moving towards something that's a little more controllable on your side. People are putting models and using something like AWS. AWS has a system called Bedrock, where they provide you the kind of models that underlie ChatGPT, Claude. Now you're using system that not everybody can get to. You don't have to worry about that contract. But think about it, and you're still using AWS. So I think some of these big family offices and these people who truly want independence from that system are becoming much more concerned with making that truly and totally private, which means bringing all of this technology in-house, having the models to use internally, and controlling the system that it runs on, controlling, to, for lack of a better term, the bare metal that these models can run on. It's actually not as complicated as it sounds. It's just a spectrum of going from, hey, they can do anything they want with anything I give them, to complete control and isolation from every other provider and saying, I get to run this, I get to control it. It's as available or not as I decide to put my time and effort into. And I think that kind of control and that kind of ability to safeguard your own processes, information, availability of the compute is probably really attractive to a number of people who have competitive advantages, internal information, and things that they don't want to share.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the families and family offices, due to a little bit of ignorance, but that's why you're here now to learn, don't understand that, again, you don't own these systems. They're open systems. They're training the models internally that are going to benefit everyone. So again, what is your competitive edge? If anything, for a savvy competitor, you're making the program better for them to learn some of your proprietary strategies. Now we could get into a little bit, do you go from a personal account to a business account, more money? Do you go up to an enterprise account, which for some families may be a good initial step? Do you consider the AWS option? And again, there's advantages and disadvantages. The pinnacle going to the top of that is really taking a platform, and I guess we'll talk about it in a second, that allows kind of what I would define as an open source foundational model. So I think OpenAI is a wonderful company. I think Anthropic, and I think some of the others out there, but Meta's Llama allows the opportunity to effectively take that internal. If you could talk a little bit without getting overly geeky on the exact mechanics behind it,
That'll be my problem.
about why it's unique, maybe the risk that they took in doing that. Could our competitors to America now get that, download it, and do their own thing in it? But what could be the advantage to families that are looking to build their own AI infrastructure, arguably upon Meta's Llama platform?
I think what you get is a great deal of control. So I think in this kind of world, you're worrying about a couple of things. You're worrying about transparency, you're worrying about speed, and you're worrying about complexity. Transparency, you just paid $20 to OpenAI. You have no, they get to see everything you're doing. So now the transparency, you can be more opaque so people can't see in. What are your strategies? What are you thinking? What do you have? What's your history? Just what are the sensitive things? Then there's the complexity, which is, it's absolutely more complex to build your own. But the thing is it's getting so much easier that it's almost a, I wouldn't call it simple, but it's a very straightforward process to say, look, I can buy a server, I can use an open source model, I can get somebody to that can help me do that. And suddenly all of these things are being run on your own. The models that are coming out that we can call open source, basically the things that you're hearing from Meta, things called Llama. They have a tool called Ollama. We don't have to get into those. That's me getting geeky again. These are the tools that you can get for free, put on your own system, and have an experience that is on par with the cutting edge foundational models that you have to pay for. So the complexity is getting much lower. So that's not a problem. Plus speed is a huge reason to do this. Is like once you started training these models on your own data, on family history, on past deals, suddenly you've got something that you don't have to share with anybody else. You have the speed and responsiveness of a real ChatGPT-like model, and you've got complete control over saying what's in the system and what's not in the system and how I want to use it without revealing anything to anybody. I think that kind of speed and lack of transparency, or not to be opaque to other people, but to say like protective, and then the decreasing complexity, as you've mentioned, is just going to drive this and make it an absolute necessity for anybody that is looking to keep up with the bigger companies that are probably paying massive amounts to the Anthropics of the world.
Indeed. And when I talk about kind of the big three, people seem to like things in threes for family offices. And why have a single family office if you're not going to be great and incredible? I think about privacy, I think about control, and I think about customization. No bank, no MFO, I'm sorry. No one cares about your money like you do as the underlying family and the entity that you built. In theory, if done right, now that's debatable if they're often done right, privacy, control, and customization is the foundation of a single family office. And when you're describing AI and controlling the process, that's exactly what you're getting. Not one of the three, not two of the three. You're getting all three. You're getting privacy, you're getting control of it, and you're getting customization specific for you. Is it easy? Well, it's easier than a year ago. It's more cost effective than a year ago. And all of that is going to get more streamlined. But if you wait until everyone's doing it and it's hyper easy 5 years from now, you're going to miss out on an incredible competitive advantage that many families could obtain now. So although I might have just answered it, what do you think is the biggest? I'm going to ask it in a little different way now, though. What is the biggest misconception about AI that you think family offices think about today?
I think you've hit on the right point, which is customization. I think there are probably people out there who think of AI as a monolith, as a one size fits all solution that just does something and it's used in a particular way. And it doesn't have to be. It can be highly customizable. We can make it for people who want someone to be doing, or some assistants to be doing high speed data analysis on massive data sets, or as a thought partner, as somebody who's going to check the information that you've got. If you've got an investment thesis that you're looking at, or if you've got some decks that you're looking at and you want to start thinking about poking holes, you can do this at scale. You can make an individual just incredibly more productive, 10x everybody at the family office, not just an engineer. I think a lot of times when we think of AI, everybody's like, oh, well, it's going to help me write code. It absolutely can. And I use it constantly to help write code. But if there's anything you do that is part of what you want for that thought partnership, or it's time that you're spending going through things to think about, well, how would I approach this? What would somebody, who disagrees with me say back? You have that in spades on any subject you can think of. And I think if the family offices are thinking like, well, AI is generally for the nerdy, it's for the people who are doing code, then they need to be up or get up to speed on this as quickly as possible. As you mentioned, 5 years from now, this is going to be dead easy to do. It's never going to be as hard as it is today. Tomorrow it's going to be easier. The next day it's going to be easier. But what those people who are waiting are not going to have is the history of working with that system, the knowledge about how it can apply, all the business cases that you can apply it to. You're going to have to learn that once you are waiting for it to get so much simpler. Start that now. Start simple, start small, start easy if you have to, but start.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I get it, to be a skeptic. I think now to be skeptical of AI being incredibly impactful is just utterly ignorant and foolish. But you may argue, could I be skeptical in terms of just waiting? And that's the problem that we described is in waiting, it may get easier and more understandable in terms of using for the average quote unquote user or family, but you're not going to be able to derive arguably the edge and the impact that you could now. The more people that start to do it and implement some of these strategies, because the easier it gets, you're going to have a lot of beta and not a lot of alpha. Now, there may be certain things specific to your family office outside of investing where that may not be impactful, but generally the sooner that you do this, the more effective and the more efficient you're going to be. And to assume that families are not interested in efficiencies, which may be a nice way of saying leaner teams, because that's saving them money, is just, again, I don't mean to be so blunt, but just foolish thinking. You've got your head in the sand. For you to be competitive and to work in a family office, even someone my age, you have to be familiar how the world works and what you learned 20 or 30 years ago. It's just different now. You need to be more savvy, digitally aware, and very fluent in AI, and have AI be your friend. Work with AI as an augment to you. Now, okay, we could get a little deeper and say in 10 or 15 years, that's going to be doing some replacements. You know what? I'm not going to lie to you. That probably is true. And for some lower level positions, it's actually happening right now. So you want to be a problem solver. Right. If you solve problems and make problems go away, I don't care what your training or education is, you're going to be fine for a while. I can never say forever. But this is a deeper discussion. Listen to my conversations on others about family office talent and compensation. And if you come to Miami and are a part of that program where I'm not being recorded and I could talk very openly, and the value of joining and being a member and being a part of it, these are all the things that you kind of get. So how will family offices that fail to adapt, maybe make it a little more blunt and crystal clear? How will family offices that fail to adapt, arguably in private AI, but at least using AI more effectively in their family office, kind of fall behind? I think my audience is going to relate more to the investing end, but if you want to bring up other parts of operational, mitigating risk, assessing geopolitical challenges, hey, those are all interesting topics to me. It's all yours, Ian.
Sure. Well, this is where it's now an old saw about you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by someone who knows AI. Tons of jobs are going to be replaced by AI. That is coming. Probably not at the level of the people you are dealing with in family offices. What this is going to be is an accelerant to the work that people do. And what you risk by falling behind is losing that speed to somebody else, someone who can incorporate not just their own sort of, expertise in the investing world that they are part of, their niche, they're perhaps maybe in real estate, or they're in private market, private equity, or maybe they're VC, whatever that is going to be, that they've got that understanding of a particular world, the ability to expand that radically, like you said, to geopolitical risk. Somebody might say like, well, I just am not an expert in geopolitical risk. Well, guess what? AI can be, and it can help you get there. I'm not a particular expert in the private equity for healthcare. Well, tell you what, I know somebody who can be, and that's you in a couple of weeks by using these tools. The people who are using them now are going to not only accelerate what they are great at, but expand what they're great at. And suddenly, if you're not part of that, you are going to be facing a row of people who are instant experts in a number of areas. And as good as you are in your particular field, you're not going to have that breadth, and you're not going to have the expertise to know, like, this is the kind of question, and this is how I find advantages in the places, in the areas I know about. Everybody can be part of that. So, I think a great one in geopolitical risk is, you mentioned AI is this new battlefield. Like, this is the new nuclear weapons. This is the Cold War. Like, the geopolitical risk for having specific AI tools is going to be massive. And I think there's going to be a particular nationalism when some of this starts happening. The most recent one we saw is in China. There was a model released, and it is terrific, and it has an amazing performance, but it is almost entirely opaque as to what the code was and how it was trained, which means Do you trust it? Can you bring that into the system? Do you think it's as, as reliable in what it's going to do? Or maybe there's some subtle biases. Maybe there's things that it won't tell you. Maybe there are things that have been just totally removed from its training information, that when you ask a question, it either hallucinates and says something totally false, or just says, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in that. I don't know anything about it. And then suddenly it's because the CCP has decided that that's just not going to be part of that model. So suddenly you're going to start finding real differences across the world and need to be up to speed on that. And I think if people are not part of this now, if they're going to realize that in 2, 3, 4 years, the people who are using it today and are part of this today know it earlier and know it better. So you're losing speed and you're losing competitive advantage.
No doubt about it. And correct, that would be a drawback to, I guess you could say, the Chinese systems, which I'll have a comment about in a second. But
sure,
let's also not fool ourselves. As we learn with some of Google's releases earlier in 2024, there's the own biases that Western and US-centric AI systems could have as well.
That's a fantastic.
We think we're better. And, the feedback that I get going to Silicon Valley talking, I'm not going to name drop two big names, although many of you know that I interviewed months back Ray Kurzweil. So not Ray, but others have reminded me, including in military, that we might have a slight edge relative in AI. We likely don't necessarily have an edge, maybe a little bit behind in robotics, and wickedly behind, and this is not good, especially in military, in drones. Or a lot of you could look back at Mark Andreessen's recent podcast in the last couple of months, and he'll go into that a little bit more in detail. Basically, deep state government, FTC, a lot of restrictions made it difficult for us to be more competitive, arguably for the benefit of good for not challenging existing systems or structures or challenges in, again, with the FTC and what could be risk. So think they're doing well, but maybe holding us back. So those of you that think that the West and the US has a massive advantage on China, it's just not true. And in some things, we're arguably, behind.
Yeah,
so,
I can tell you. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, please.
The big three that all this sits on that AI sits on is data, compute, and algorithms. And you can think of this as, if you've got the data, you can train these. This is what OpenAI and Anthropic are doing, are trying to ingest the entire web and all of the books and all of the video. Well, in countries like China that have far more permissive rules on what can be used from street cameras, from police cameras, from video captured in...
they have a lot more data.
They have a lot more data. This is one of the reasons facial recognition in China is so much further improved than in the US. And then compute. Right now, we kind of have a US or a sort of an international equilibrium in compute, in that we're seeing like NVIDIA is running away with things, but anybody can kind of buy NVIDIA. Now with the CHIPS Act, that's been changed. There's some things that you can't get in other places. So compute is one that has to be fought on, but the other one is algorithms. And one of the reasons, like you're talking about with drones, is other countries. It used to be that, like when I came up doing machine learning, I used to build tons of machine learning algorithms for products, for everything from consumer to enterprise. And those were released. They were just released by research organizations. You got it out of CMU, you got it out of Stanford, you got it out of MIT. Here's a great new set of algorithms. Terrific. Those are open source. I can just import them, use a quick tool, and all of a sudden I get to have it. That's not the case anymore with like these large scale algorithms that are fueling the AI systems that we have on drones and behind ChatGPT and all of these. It is happening behind closed doors. So we don't know what the status is. So suddenly these big three things, data, compute, and algorithms, we don't have a great sense of who has the benefit there. But like you said, we can think about this. Absolutely, the Western side has some biases. But when we think about more authoritarian countries, they're going to be far ahead in terms of things like data, use all of the personal data that they can get.
And talking a little bit, because I've been talking about this on my platforms, to my members, to some select consultative relationships, and making introductions. If you could define, I guess, the cousin of AI, AI agents. One, what is AI agents to you? And for families looking to develop more, let's call it their own infrastructure, especially if they're an MFO and client facing, but even if not, the value of how AI agents works together, for lack of a better word, with AI.
Sure. One of these days, if we get a chance, I'll buy you a whiskey and we'll have the really philosophical discussion of what AI and AI agent is. But generally, when we talk about an agent or an AI agent at this point, what we're thinking is allowing for something like ChatGPT or one of these tools. Well, now I'm going to overuse this particular word, for one of these programs to use what people will call tools. Tool use is the big item for agents. That means it can choose to go search the web for something. It can choose to go run a query on a database. It can choose to revise an email before it gets sent. So what's happening with you use the AI, you go into some ChatGPT or Olama or whatever you're going to use and say, I'm writing this report. I want to talk about investment strategies in the family office over the past 10 years. Great. And it gives you some background. And if it's tied into your data, it can go into your database and just say like, all right, this is what I found. The agent becomes more active when it says, well, great, I did this for you. Do you want me to write the Word document? I'll open the Word document up. I'll put the drafts in. I will query the database, pull some numbers in. I'll go out to the web to see what the, 10 years of some stock data have been. I'll drag that in for you. And then I will choose, the email format, or I'll create a report format for you so that it's kind of ready to send out to your whoever you might have on Substack or your readers or somebody like here, like this on at Family Office. Those agents are the things that operate, that have the tools and can use those tools. So AI, in terms of is generally what we think about with these big LLMs or large language models, giving them the access to tools to make those choices is where we start thinking about agents. And they become really, really powerful when you start using your imagination a bit to say, well, everybody talks about, oh, well, it searched the web for me, or it opened up a Microsoft Word document for me. Well, that's fine. But when it starts getting to, will it email folks for you? Can it make a phone call? Can it start taking actions? Can it schedule your plane trip? Can it text your friends to tell you where to meet at for dinner? Can it make those reservations? Those things that you generally think of as being able to do online, but it's doing it independently.
Excellent. And I do appreciate the comments coming in from Richard and from others. So thank you.
Excellent.
Having a collective community, adding commentary and thought leadership, and then some questions is always good. So always appreciated. And I would recommend on the AI agent side, one, informing yourself. It's not that hard, and maybe spending a little bit of money and understanding things like Replit and Crew. As a basic guy like me that doesn't have a tech background, it's very cheap and it wasn't hard. And there's also platforms out there for you can educate yourself. Some of it costs a little bit of money, whatever, $50, a couple $100. These are worth it. It's your career, it's your future, it's the opportunity to excel, to be employable. You always have to be on top of yourself. Knowledge is very valuable. I hate when people say it's not valuable, there's too much of it. Well, yeah, because of the internet, sometimes it's hard to source what good. But I always ask, if knowledge isn't valuable, then how come I can't trade on public company information if I were to have it? It's illegal. It's illegal for a reason, because it gives me a massive edge. So knowledge is absolutely valuable. Spend a little bit of money, learn how to use those platforms. I'm not saying it's going to be a perfect fit at the moment for your family office or the privacy and control that you want, but it gets you more fluid, especially if you're not, a computer scientist or AI expert. On that subject, expert, what are the critical steps for a family that wants to go a little all out? What are the critical steps for assembling an elite AI engineering team, and what sort of people would potentially be in it? If, let's go with, money is relatively no object.
Absolutely. Well, I would go buy an entire department at Carnegie Mellon and then bring everybody over. No, the easiest thing to do is, one, get started. And the types of people you're going to want are not necessarily the PhD researchers. These are great folks who are contributing heavily to our understanding of what these things are. What you're going to want is someone who is far more skilled and knowledgeable about building the tool in a productive, useful way. So research is often focused on cutting edge things with tools that are barely available outside of the research world. You want to find people who have an experience in building actual products that somebody will use. So one of the things that happens when you build these types of systems, and really any sort of system, is it's always the weird little edge cases. So find someone with experience who knows what like when a problem arises, has seen it before, and is someone who has said, oh, I remember this from the last 40 times I've done it, and here's how to build it. So what you're going to want is an AI engineer with experience. They don't necessarily have to have been in a former, say, OpenAI or Anthropic engineer, somebody who was a founder at Microsoft way back in the day. What you want is considered experience in a number of areas in building a tool. The reason I say that is because so much of the under the hood kind of stuff ends up being straight software engineering, straight software architecture development, because so much of the AI stuff is prepackaged. So you want somebody who can deploy it, work with it, understand it when it's failing. So that would be an AI engineer, machine learning engineer, someone who's done architecture. The big one I'm going to tell you that you have to have are data engineers. And these are the folks that are going to be absolutely crucial, because there's one thing I've, learned is that the joke from when I started in the world of data science and machine learning, about 90% of your time is going to be data, and then 10% is actually all the fun modeling, is 100% true. Getting data in to train these systems, collecting the data, getting it into the right format. These offices, probably at least like the one I worked at, have tons of information about what they're interested in, the things they've been doing, their investment theses, the companies they've worked with in the past. But you've got it in Word documents, you've got it in Google Slides, you've got it in a PDF, you've got Excel spreadsheets. The time and effort to get that into a format that is usable by these LLMs and by the kinds of systems you want are really going to be some of the big time-consuming steps. Not that it's insurmountable, but you want someone who's good at that. You want someone who has a ton of experience and can build those pipelines and make it easy for you to say, as I get new information, I just dump it right into my system and it's now available for me. That is data engineering, and it is a crucial system. Crucial part of the system that, as we talk about people being an AI engineer, a machine learning engineer, I think people end up forgetting that so much of this is dependent on the data and just moving data around.
Indeed. And I mean, I guess there's a couple of ways to do it. You could look at it as being somewhat outsourcing for that to build it, or perhaps if you're really a significant family office, building a team, maybe 2 to 4 people internally. Again, you have the money. Right. And what's the value that you're going to get out of it? Now, could you argue that creates additional layers, more talent that may lead to other people being weary of that talent, that it could be taking their job relative to what they're building internally? So there are politics and nuances here that are complex. And I'm not saying that in 90 minutes today that we're going to solve all that. But I do think these are things that you need to look at. What potentially would be a timeline for building something that is, you organize inside or outside the SFO, they got the mandate, they now need to do their thing? Are we looking at 2 months to be operational and functional, 6 months, a year? How long?
Of course, it all depends on your appetite. Just how big do you want this to be? I would say find your lead AI engineer, find a couple of data engineer people. You got maybe 3 folks, and give them 6 months. And they will have a tool that is working for you, that is on your own system, that has some data in it, and you will be able to use it and start seeing the benefits from it, and it being entirely personal, entirely private, within 6 months. That may be overestimating things a bit, but I think, my interpretation of the scale of that is always based on the amount and the complexity of your data. I think the individual who is setting up the initial, like, all right, I'm going to have an open source model sitting on a laptop, or NVIDIA just released I think it's called Digits, this $3,000 AI computer that is fantastic, and it can run these multi-billion parameter models that you hear in the news. It can run it right there. That's a fantastic thing to do. Somebody's going to be able to have that up, and you can start playing around with it inside of several weeks. the issue is going to be, all right, well, great, but it doesn't know anything about me. Now we need to start teaching it about you and your family office and your interests and what you're looking at. That's what's going to take a little bit of time. But I would say within 6 months, you could have something functional and working and showing you the returns that you are hoping for. And then, you know, keep that going over the next couple of years and just watch the thing accelerate.
In terms of, and ignoring the money part of it, what are some of the main challenges in developing proprietary AI systems or training protocols?
Well, you don't necessarily need to develop a private training protocol. Fine tuning and training is pretty well standardized, and you can see it because it's the models that are out there. These things called transformers, or the dominant model. Some other types of models have shown up that people have tried that seem to have some benefits, but haven't knocked the transformer off its pedestal yet. The big thing is the private compute time. If you have massive amounts of data and you want to go down the route of fine tuning, it can take some heavy compute costs and some time. Now, of course, like you said, money not being the constraint here, it will just take some time to train it, test it out, see if it worked, rerun the training. That kind of thing just takes a little bit of effort that you're always going to have to sort of grind through and see what it takes. Now, when you download one of these 10, 20 billion parameter models on their own, they're going to be heavily tuned to sort of general data. And then you want to start figuring out what the private data is that you want to get there. Again, it just goes back to how are you choosing that data? When are you providing it? And how extensive do you want that fine tuning to be? If you are thinking of the full on, I'm going to train an entire model that's going to be some form of nearly foundational model, then we're talking, you know, but even in this stratosphere, money becomes a bit of a constraint.
And again, the advantage to being live in the moment and not hearing this on a recording is we got some great comments coming in. Richard's doing a very good job. He has a bit of a comical comment that has a grain of truth to it. It may take maybe 2 people a long weekend if they have enough caffeine, maybe some other sugar stimulants as well. Yeah. No sleep, 48 hours. You'll actually be surprised what people who know how to get things done could do in relatively a more modest amount of time. So kudos to that.
Yeah,
you know,
the tool
that's
Olama.
The right attitude.
Yeah.
And that's a problem in many family offices. Being rather blunt, you move too damn slow. Jeff Bezos has written eloquently about that. You don't need to have 100% of the information to make a decision. You could also adapt as you go along. And that attitude and slowness and moving too slow, what are you missing out on? Now, don't get me wrong. I guess by going too quickly, are you occasionally going to crash? The answer is yes. But what are you crashing? What are you learning from the mistake? How much money did you lose? But how much money did you make when you got things right? It's more of a complex thought process than just assuming we need to be very careful. We're already rich. Let's move really slow. That's going to create a bad attitude in the family, the rising generation, the family office. They're going to be too protective, too careful. And you actually know what that does over time. And I know you're going to win some battles, but what that does is it makes you fragile. That's the problem with that. Okay, I'm off of my soapbox, and I'll leave that one to you now.
That's okay. I thought maybe we might get into the anti-fragility debates. I thought so I appreciate that.
Oh, no, I always love to have that conversation. Maybe taking it a little bit to AI for investment and maybe risk management. How does AI, if you want to throw in AI agents, improve market analysis and investment execution for a public equity direct investing family office, for maybe even an LP investor? Is it simply going by old patterns and data, but is that going to hold up moving forward in a fast changing world?
I think you've got one of the best and most tireless sort of investing partners in AI. So somebody who can go out and get the data. You can set up agents to start. ChatGPT just released this thing called tasks. Everybody's going to think of it a bit like Google Tasks, meaning like, oh, I write in there, hey, remember to bring home the milk, remember to pick up your daughter from school, whatever it's going to be. The ChatGPT version of it is it can schedule things to do. So if you want market research done every day at a certain amount of time, and you can do 30 of these and say, go look at all of these areas, bring it back, synthesize it, and synthesize it with the information from 30 other tasks, suddenly what you've got is a partner there who is capable of reading more than you can, of synthesizing faster than you can, and being a great expert in areas that you might not be an expert in yet and want to learn more about. You've got a fantastic person there who can poke holes in everything you do. Here's what I'm going to try. What can possibly go wrong? You can try out, this is what I do a lot, is try out your craziest ideas on ChatGPT and say, well, all right, I want you to assume the role of an expert investor, or I want you to assume the role of a startup founder that has had multiple exits. What are they going to tell me is wrong with my idea? And you get this feedback, and then you can respond to that and you can think through it. So when you're thinking about risk, one of the things that's hard to do is, in a maligned term that I actually like, is unknown unknowns. Like, what am I forgetting? Here's what I want to do. What have I not mentioned that the top investors are all talking about, but I did not talk about in this review I gave, or this talk I gave, or this thing? And it can come back and say, like, here are 13 things. And you go, yeah, 10 of those I've already thought about, and just, those aren't real. But then you get some really good insight and some of this help that says, oh, well, I hadn't thought about that, or this is a way that I can think about it that I hadn't gone down that path before. So when you start thinking about it, I think of this as rapidly expanding the breadth that you can hit in any amount of time. You just physically don't have the amount of time to go through the returns for every market, for every stock that you possibly are interested in. Well, guess what? AI does. It has that time, it has that ability, and does it way faster, and never minds that you ask it to do the same thing 400 times in a row.
There is a question that came in. Yes, it is a good question. Are LLMs better at risk management than a human at the moment? And part of it may depend on what kind of human. Who's the human you're talking about?
Right. And depending on the risks that you're worried about, I think of it this way. We can have all the debates we want about artificial general intelligence, artificial super intelligence, but what the humans got to have is great. This is to quote, or at least to reference Steve Jobs, great taste. The questions you want to ask, and what are good questions to be asking. What is the right way to look at this, and what are we concerned about in terms of risk? I think the human's much better at saying, here's how these risks can impact me, and I want to be careful about X, Y, and Z. And then you go to the LLM and spell that out, and it can fire hose back. Here are all the things to worry about. Here are all the ways to worry about it. But it's you that has come up with a good question. Here's why I'm worried about this particular risk. To go back to what we were saying, here's why I'm worried about drones made in China. Like, they seem to be far better at certain things, but what about the chip supply chain? What about so like when I want to buy something, I'm worried about this risk, but I'm not military, so maybe I'm not that worried about the chip supply chain. But I have to have the taste and understanding of my own interests in order to give the LLM a really good question, and then it's going to be better, or at least faster than most humans, at going, all right, here's everything you need to consider, and here's the ways to mitigate that risk within the information you've given me.
And yes, audience, I've done a fair amount of AI interviews, programs, consultative relationships. As I noted, probably not the subject today to get into exactly what is AGI. Kurzweil says it's coming in 2029. Altman has kind of hinted that they kind of may have it now. And then others have written about the utopia or dystopia of effectively super intelligence. Could that lead to fusion energy, solving world energy problems? It could lead to a lot of good and a lot of bad, and we'll save that discussion yet again for a different time. We're trying to be a little bit more focused today on the more specific topic at hand. Another question I think related to that is, how can AI help family offices predict and prepare for major market shifts?
In the world of prediction, we're starting to get a little bit further into the world that I came from, which is machine learning. So the LLMs as they exist now are not the best mathematicians, but what they are fantastic queryers of databases, and you can write SQL and have them write SQL. The whole point of that is to get data and to collect data. But then you're going to start moving into the machine learning world where you want to do predictive algorithms, you want to do long range reviews and say what contributes to these things. My background includes a lot of causal analysis, meaning like what truly caused some effect. But what the LLM might be great at helping you do and think through are new features and types of data to add to these models. What are things that become correlated with international conflict or with the movement in understanding the price of some commodity that's coming out of China, rare earth metals or something coming out of Europe? What are the types of things that people have said are correlated? So it's going to be a fantastic sort of research partner before you get into the heavy duty computation of machine learning, so that you have a better sense of what are the things I need to be paying attention to. If anybody's ever watched the fantastic show Silicon Valley, there was a caricature of a VC who tried to he needed to make some $10 million. So he essentially cornered the market on sesame seeds by moving ships around. Then the value went up. He cashed out and moved, understanding where those sesame seeds come from. How do they move? What are those components that go into it? We think of as some ultra brilliant individual just has a particular ability to think through that. Well, try asking the AI system that. What does it have? What does it know? What can it do for research? There's a terrific tool out there called Elicit, ELICIT.ai, that can summarize research from any chemical engineering to econometrics to geology, and it will show you the top results. Ask what those are. Those are the types of things that you can do with this. And if you start going private, then you can reach out to an open tool and go, well, just give me some ideas. And then you take that back to data that you have and that and that you can work with directly.
With the advancements in AI, which literally is every second, and it's someone like the current CEO of Google, Alphabet, basically saying it will be as impactful as fire and electricity. I mean, let that sink in. Look at the exponential growth. I guess Jensen Huang doubling every 1.08 years, but do the math on that. The old adage, give me a penny on day one, but have it compound and double every day. By the end of 30 days, you have a massive amount of money. And even Elon talks about 10xing. So 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes 100, 100 becomes 1,000. What, at the end of 3 years? This is all growing so fast. There's no question this will bring increased fraud, deep fakes, which is already happening, and tricking even smart people, including family offices, and cyber attacks. Could having internal AI systems help with determining others that are trying to attack with their own AI as frauds?
It could. I think you have a couple of modes there. One is, sending AI to understand AI. You get something in, can it read the email and say, this sounds like it was generated by AI? Schools are trying that with plagiarism, and it's not going great, but at least you can have it say, what are the email addresses? And this I can go out and search the major databases that have fraud emails and say hey, this is, this email address looks like it's coming from a certain area. So you can have it be an initial screen. So think of it as the spam protection on your Gmail on an incredible amount of steroids, and just say, I can check this against what's out there. I can do some initial checks. But this is another reason to get started with AI now, to understand its patterns, to understand its abilities, and to say, if somebody's sent me a picture of a check and it's got my signature on it, you've got to, know, well, what were the dates? Could I possibly have done that? You'll have to refer back to your own ideas and then go back and start thinking, I know that that's something that AI can generate, and I need to be really, really careful of that. My signature might have been out there in something that is available. So you've got the technological solution, but there's also the technical savvy to say, when I get an email that looks like a bunch of them now are shipments. So because of the prominence of Temu and Shein, tons of emails I get in are hey, your package has been detained at the border. Can you just give us a quick call? Well, it looks really good. It looks like a great email, but like you dig in and you can see some of like the file names and the images that look through it are absolutely, you know, goofy. And, you know, so you need something to help you with that. AI is going to be able to do that really, really well. But, you know, you also have to have the savvy to say, you know, this stuff is coming and I know it's out there. I think the deep fakes are going to be hard. I think I do not have a great solution to that or the best advice other than to say you've just got to be so careful. I am, you know, stunned at the amount that came out for the fires in LA, like, and the ability to tell the difference from a human or by a human is so low that, you know, it's going to take AI to figure out if that was an AI generated photo, because it's, you know, can that building actually have existed? And it's going to go compare it to, you know, who knows, Google Street View or Zillow photos. And these are the things that AI can do that when I look at it and it says like, hey, this house burned down and I'm trying to claim my insurance, the amount of insurance fraud that's going to be run through, you know, so if you're thinking about your investments in insurance companies, the amount of insurance fraud that's going to come through because of these deep fakes is going to be unbelievable.
Oh, we're getting really deep now there, Ian.
Yeah.
We're going to save some of that for those that are desiring to be more engaged. We'll get to that a little bit at the end. I got some very, what could be sensitive couple of questions coming up for those broadly in wealth management and family offices. Without further ado, I'll just shoot them at you.
Okay.
How soon? It's a matter of when, not if. How soon will AI effectively replace traditional, I could even say hedge funds, wealth managers, investment teams?
I don't think full replacement happens in 2025. I think early on it is an accelerant. It is people finding the niches that work really well and being able to do it 10, 20, 30 times faster than they have before. I think these hedge funds, these private equity, VC, whoever it is, are going to find themselves not having to hire. So the very first thing that's going to happen is that hiring slows down as people figure out like, oh, I can do this particular job really, really fast. I think what ends up being the case is the skeleton size of some of these companies will you'll either stay the same size, you may downsize a little bit. But over the next couple of years, we're going to see funds, companies that are run by 2 people, 3 people. Maybe somebody's amazing at sales and we're not in a world where I want to be sold to by an AI yet. The CEO with the vision and 1 engineer. So, you know, to wholly replace an entire hedge fund top to bottom, I don't think happens for a couple of years, but I think you can get down to an incredibly successful hedge fund, family office, multifamily office, whoever it is that has a skeleton crew, I would say by the end of 2025.
Ian, it's my world. And I'm also moderately fluent on the things that you're talking
Yeah, please.
about. I've been talking about this for at least the last quarter. And again, I probably get more hate than anything else I do. More so than I was telling people to buy Bitcoin 4 years ago. Of course, I ended up being correct about that. Solana and others. I was wrong about others, but we won't talk about that. There's no doubt. I am telling you, and you're confirming it, that this is all coming. And I hear so much from people, no, I don't believe it. You got your head in the sand, you're ignorant to the problem, and you want to assume things are going to be the way they were, because as a human, that's how your perspective is. And by the way, I'm not looking to displace you. I think you're awesome, and you could probably be, maybe we could always be the best version of ourselves. You have to work on getting better. But to assume that hedge funds, wealth managers, and family offices at minimal, like you said, are going to do less hiring. What is that going to mean to college students and younger people in their 20s? Let go of people that are, quote unquote, not getting it done or not keeping up. And it's going to limit the number of people in teams. So one of my programs that I teach is basically the 1 to 3 person, which you just noted right there, the 1 to 3 person family office for the multi-billionaire that might even have some complexities. Do you have the CEO as being a problem solver and strategist, and effectively a technician with the right tools being the person or the team, the machines that quote unquote execute? Are we quite there yet? Well, kind of, but is this going to get better and easier? and more viable and more cost effective to the family. Families like to save money, especially if they could deem to get better performance. Over the next 6 to 18 months, we're going to see a lot of changes. People don't want to talk about this because it's uncomfortable. And honestly, most people in the family office world, like my part of it, the community of education, they are so old and antiquated, so vanilla, so afraid to rock the boat, never talk about any sensitive subjects, and are so woefully ignorant on AI. It's like it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And I know some of you think I'm a little over the top. I'm a little bit of a showman, all in that. Fine, think that. I'm telling you, and Ian's verifying it. Listen to Kurzweil, Andreessen, Thiel, and others. They're all talking about this. It's not going to take 10 years. It's happening right now. And this is just the reality of it. And oh, but they need the human interaction. I agree with you. A lot of the people that are principals now are absolutely going to need a human interaction. That may mean one person. It may mean two. It's not going to be 10 or 20. And do you think the children of these wealthy families are not going to be digitally savvy, tech savvy, AI growing up? And this is sad, less interested in human interaction and more so in quote unquote, let's go with the word machines. Like it's just foolish to think otherwise. So maybe an interesting twist. Could AI become the ultimate governance tool for family office? So what is governance? Governance is effectively, how do we make decisions, or how do we make joint decisions as a family? How do you see potentially, and I know it may be a little bit outside of your realm, but you did work inside a family office. How do you think AI could be impactful from a decision-making perspective, maybe non-financially centric?
I think it could be a fantastic, the term I would use possibly is arbiter, or you find there has to be somebody in the middle who takes in all of the views, and everybody can contribute. Here are my views, and here's what I think about what's going to happen. Here's the pluses, the minuses. Here's where I want to move things to, and you get it taken from all sides. The AI is going to be the best way to synthesize all of that. See some commonalities, depends on the size of the number of people in the family who get to have a say. If it's, a father and his daughter debating things, you probably don't need it to be moderated by ChatGPT. If you've got 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15 people who have some form of say in the various companies, and you need to collect that information and see what the commonalities are, what the arguments are, and then you can start having that sort of back and forth. Whoever has to be that ultimate decision maker can use that as a proxy to say, like, all right, when I start thinking through this, how are people going to respond to me before I get to that kind of meeting where I'm telling folks what's about to happen, or where I'm trying to solicit more feedback? You've got then is sort of a trained partner, someone who can take on various personalities, perhaps. Maybe there's enough information there to say, like, well, what's my CFO going to tell me? Like, well, I've got all the decision and all the notes that for my CFO over time. This is what's my lawyer going to tell me? Well, I've got all my contracts. I've got everything in the AI. It can probably give me a good facsimile of what my lawyer would say. And now when I come to these meetings, I'm much more prepared. I know what's going to be happening. So in the sort of non-quantitative world, this becomes a great adjudicator and arbiter of what people might work through, and then say, like, all right, help me structure my decision in such a way as it addresses all the points that people are going to raise. You can kind of move forward in that way. I've used that. I've actually done that in technical meetings. I come from a software building world. I build companies that produce software products, and we understand, it's like, look, everybody's got 9 different ways they want to see this thing go. Tell me what you think. I go through it. I produce some document that says, here's our product requirements document. It's addressed what everybody thinks are the big problems and what the big hassles are. And now everybody gets to move forward. I think it's been a fantastic way for people to say, oh, great, you've listened to me. You've listened to my concerns. You've addressed them. Let's move forward and not just keep having the fight.
I'm trying to think how to phrase my next question. We hinted at it earlier. There's just not a lot of family offices that are utilizing these tools anywhere near their maximum capacity. That creates not a lot of volume and inefficiencies. Henceforth, that does create asymmetrical opportunities, in my perspective and my experiences, for family offices. As this gets more acclaim, as it gets more users, as more people do it because it's more even cost effective to do your own infrastructure, it may get, quote unquote, more common usage. It gets harder to kind of squeeze out alpha. And then at the end of the day, someone's always going to have better AI. How am I, as a lowly family office, going to compete with Elon, with Bezos, with Zuck relative to their $100 billion, and probably in a couple of years, they'll be trillionaires? How are we going to compete with it not becoming incredibly top heavy, that maybe their AI is, and I'm making this up, twice as good as mine? They're sweeping up and kind of steamrolling pennies, but those pennies add up. How are we going to compete with governments, with gigantic $100 billion plus hedge funds, with billion and trillionaires, if we're just a lowly, and I'm going to get hate for this one, a lowly $200 million family office? Or could you be surprised? I don't know, Ian. I'm asking you.
It's a great question. I think the kinds of names you mentioned are always going to have a little bit of access that, you know, we're just are entirely limited to them. But think about what it is they've got that's making them differentiated. And I would argue that it's not money, it's data. It is the data that they have access to and that they're using. So something on the scale of Meta. So if we're talking about the company, Meta is releasing its models to the open source. If we're thinking, what is it that Zuck's got that other people don't? Well, probably he's got a pretty quantified life. He has got everybody who's an assistant to his supporter, and, you know, whatever, his army of lawyers and his financial assistants and the people who help with his family and help design his house. He's almost certainly got a pretty heavily digitized view of all of that. So he has all of his information somewhere in there. And I guarantee you he's putting it into databases that AI can use. It's called RAG, so a database that has information that can help create responses for his AI. Personalized, long-lived information. I would say Elon probably has the same. All of the companies that he runs, all the things that they process, all the emails he gets, are being digitized and turned into assets for the AI he uses. And, you know, to date, so far as we can tell, XAI, Grok, the one with the K, not the Q, I believe, maybe I have that backwards, isn't as good as the open source models or the other ones. So it's not that his AI is better, it's how he's using it and what he's doing with that data that really probably gives him that kind of opportunity. And to me, that's something that people in these family offices can start doing. They can start generating the data that they need. They can start digitizing a lot of the kind of ways in which they work. Now, how do you get access to the financial information that Elon gets on a daily basis? That one's probably more of a human interaction than AI.
And now, I guess the challenge with big institutions and banks is they could be incredibly bureaucratic. They're going to be slow moving. I'm assuming the architecture and AI structures, even at big banks, especially if they're not the monster ones like JP Morgan, but maybe the next tier, it's probably a little antiquated and a little slow moving. Therefore, until that's corrected, and maybe that's 10 years, which is why I think if you're coming out of college now, an entrepreneur, really anyone, including a family office, and I hear shit for this one too, make money now. You might have a 10-year window. Then I think it's just me and people I talk to going to get harder. Maybe not impossible. Maybe the world's a utopia and all is awesome. I don't know. But I think it's going to be an interesting next 10 years. You got to put the pedal to the metal. You got to make money. You got to protect it. And those are all things that I go into in some of the more deeper work that I do. But turning what I said into a question with hierarchy, or more so bureaucracy and antiquated structures in a lot of institutions and banks, family offices might have the edge in being nimble, in being able to turn the ship quick and make a quick decision, having more nimble resources. So could there be a shift in the balance of power between significant families comparative to big banks and institutions?
I would not be surprised to see that. I think that is one of the great promises of these tools, is it sort of, for lack of a better term, democratizes some abilities and skills that have been concentrated inside of walls. The ability to think through these problems. What is it that these massive companies know? What is it that they're looking at? I now have just as much access to that if it's out in the public. Obviously, nothing's being trained on the, however many years of JP Morgan's private history, but I don't know that JP Morgan's got anything working on its own private history quite yet. Companies like McKinsey, however, do spend a great deal of time trying to ramp up their own AI, and it takes a lot because of all that bureaucracy. So the best time to start was yesterday, but if you can't go back in time, then start now and then start ramping up, because I think the more these tools get better at, the more the AI gets better at using tools, just to go back to the phrase that I used before, the faster and better you're going to be at getting the kinds of ability to do analysis, ability to see the market, the ability to see investment results, get a view on your particular industry niche, or perhaps international things, or learning a new one that you can do at a speed that you'd normally aim somebody who just got out of college and really is desperate for a career in investment banking, go spend all of this time and build me a deck for it. Well, you now have an infinite number of those people at your command by opening up a chat window.
How will family offices that don't adapt to AI, and especially more private infrastructure of AI, fall behind in the next decade? Giving a little bit of context, among the most common responses I get from families or more antiquated thinking family office executives is the family's already rich. Let's give a round number. It's $1 billion. Angelo, I think you're probably correct on the long term. Your timeline might be a little off because you appear to be things are going to happen quicker. I think I'm right, but who knows? Maybe there's an in between, or maybe they're right. But we're still going to be a wealthy family. We're still investing, and maybe our purchasing power will be the same at the end of 5 or 10 years. Well, it's relative. What really is the true cost of inaction? What are your competitors doing? What opportunities are you missing? How are you engaging the rising generation? And this gets into a whole concept about the haves and have-nots, about taxation, about wealth. We can make it a very deep overall, bigger picture, macro and micro discussion, and probably today's not the time. But how do you help families and their family offices get started that, yeah, you're rich, you're probably going to be okay in 5 or 10 years. I could actually paint a picture that you're not going to be okay, and there's going to be big problems. But that's not quite what we're going to talk about today. How would you help that family see the desire to take action and move forward when in their mind, they don't need to? Angelo's talking 40, 50 years out, which is not true. It's a lot sooner, but they don't quite get that. How could you help them understand to move quicker?
The first thing I would go to on a discussion would be to say, the people you're competing with, or at least in the world with right now, are going to be using AI to understand one of what seems to me to be the hardest topics in all of this, which is international taxation regimes. They're changing constantly. They are complex. They require a lot of back and forth. They require locational knowledge. And I am fully convinced that a lot of places are using these AIs to optimize their tax situations across these countries, because it is so much easier and faster to do and understand the implications, where the investments are, where do you have the taxes, like where do you have things incorporated, where you have holding companies, where are your assets, what's being taxed in terms of houses, businesses, other assets that you've got. I would say that without the advantages of these AIs, you are going to be behind in the understanding the tax changes that are happening and are coming without, and being hit pretty hard and fast. The other thing I would talk about is, if you are saying, I'm going to try some AI stuff, I'm going to go into ChatGPT and pay my $20, you're doing what everybody else is doing. Like, you're being totally transparent to OpenAI. You are getting the same information that you're going to get, that anybody else is going to get. And you are, not giving yourself the advantage that you could be by taking your internal understanding and data and making the AI work for you, almost like one of the big terms right now is vertical AI, meaning industry specific AI. It's something I work on in the insurance area, but we can think of these as family verticals, like understanding who it is. If your family is heavily involved in media, understanding the media vertical. If it's heavily involved in real estate, what is the real estate vertical? And getting that specific information and to be able to use it that way, you're just sort of letting that advantage go. Other people are doing it and other people are going to use it, and you're going to be behind, even just in expertise. Like, even if you just are this interested in your topic, in your area, you're going to be behind. Other people are going to be ahead of you.
Yeah, like if you just stay still, you're not really staying still. There's hungry people coming up behind you, and henceforth, you're slowly going downhill. You're the frog in the pot of the just heated up water that's getting hotter all the time, and you don't notice it until it's too late. It's a little bit of the issue in one of the conversations I talk about is the Detroit paradox, and a little bit of when you see the tsunami, it's too late.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you see that water rush back on the
hard.
beach,
It's
you
hard
are already in trouble.
Exactly. You got to get the binoculars out and see it maybe a week or two before, or you get the big picture of it. Something that you said just sparked in my mind on the tax aspect, a little bit more for non-U.S. international citizens that aren't tied into the U.S. green card or tax structure, being a citizen where tax arbitrage is harder. But let's stay on the U.S. citizen for a second. I'm surprised there's something not like this now. I guess this is a big threat to accountants. Let's assume the US tax code, I don't know, is it available to everyone? Is it like 22,000 pages? Okay, fine. Can't that just be downloaded into an AI to get me the best possible tax strategies? I never hear anyone talk about that.
It is totally available. All of that government information is there and usable. And I mean, I've got Olama on my laptop, and 22,000 pages is kind of nothing for what we need. You absolutely can have that in the system on a personal laptop. And it's 1 o'clock where I am. I would say by 3 o'clock.
Under 2 hours, have all the answers that you need. Now, again, that goes a bigger picture into the future of accounting and legal. And one of the people I spoke to at a major legal firm said, yeah, Angelo, you're 100% correct. And by the way, you think we're a stodgy old firm. We're already familiar with these things that you're talking about. We know that we don't need as many associates. We know that if we have less associates, and by the way, most of them are not necessarily that good. The ones that are good, 50-50, they don't get a better offer and go to a different shop after we train them. And people are infallible. They make mistakes. They get sick. Things go wrong. They do things among office politics and affairs that could often get the company in trouble. Like, oh, so we could save money. Now, longer term, what's going to happen with the future of senior partners? Is it going to impact longer term, decades out? I don't know. But to assume that they're not thinking about this already, and are those professions going to be applicable for people that spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get these degrees that may not be as valuable now? That goes back to the ability of thinking for yourself, being a problem solver, and a little bit, quote unquote, beyond the data in the books. Although it's going to get a little more complicated as we progress into AGI and all that. But again, a subject for a different time. This has been a very intriguing discussion. Ian, I've been looking to do this with you for a while. I'm going to make a little bit of a update for those that are listening live, and then also kick it back to you. So first of all, if you're listening live, always thank you. Hope all is going good here early in 2025. Tomorrow, meaning Wednesday, live, I'll be hosting David Tetton, who's wonderful as a thought leader in VC and in fintech. We're going to touch a little bit upon AI, but I think you're going to find that a very intriguing discussion, including probably some things on tech and tech stacks for family offices. I don't know if that one's going to make it more publicly. I may do clips from it. So being live, especially as a member, is going to be the best way. As I hinted earlier, on next Monday, the 27th through Thursday, I'm traveling down to Miami. Seems like the whole finance world is going there. I will be attending multiple different programs, but speaking on the 28th and 29th in the morning for family offices on Correlated Miami at the beautiful Vienna. That is a great place. So I look forward to that. And some of the topics that we're talking about now, and some of my further thoughts on sovereign risk, what is liquidity, and opportunities in 10x investments. So that's going to be an incredible kind of 2 hours each of those days. So feel free to DM me if interested. It's not my conference, so it's not my call, but I could pass on your information. And if you're a family office as a member or someone I know, then it really should be no problem. But feel free to reach out. And like I always say, you could always text me. I'm good with that. 203 or 203 formally, 570-2898. DM or email is also fine. I think I hinted at it a little bit in some of my shoots I've been doing in both Wyoming and in Connecticut, and that I will be hosting or technically co-hosting a program in beautiful Palm Beach in March. It's very, very tightly controlled. I'm basically already 98% good on kind of the program and flow. We're really looking for only an intimate number of family offices. And because I'm deemed to be too much of a nice guy, which sometimes I am, my partner in that program is the one who decides on attendance. Members first, they always get in, but we have a select opportunity for others. It is not my call, and you better be a real family office because he's 10 times tougher than me. And most people, if you haven't allocated capital and could effectively prove it in the last year, it is not going to get in, period. And we only really need a couple of more attendees. So we're in great shape there. But just a heads up, and there'll be some content that we'll make public after the fact from that program, because there's going to be incredible speakers and great content. So reach out to me. I love this subject that we're talking about today. I've been at the forefront of it for, I think, a while. And I know I'm a little bit always seeing around corners on the edge of the community. And yes, sometimes my timelines are a little off. I'm probably not the most beloved person among the traditional, what's the word that they use in media and how media is changing, basically the status quo, the standard. Like, that's just not me. If that's what you want, then I'm not going to be a good fit, period. I'm the alternative to, I think what you're getting is bland and vanilla and just not good in the family office world. So I'm excited about what I do. Go to angelorobles.com, have a chance to reach out to me and join and be a member. And that's when you really get to connect the dots. You get the proprietary information and the things that we're talking about today. You are going to need some hand holding on. So members get that direct introduction to Ian and me working with you to help kind of flesh out what you're looking for that may need to progress into a consultative relationship. But having a quarterback, someone who understands it, and also family offices, I'm telling you, and I think there's areas where I'm not so good at, where I'm weaker at on family governance, on philanthropy and other things, where I think there's people far better and more capable than me. But when you come into my wheelhouse on certain things in the family office world, on investing and on areas pertaining to being future forward, effectively from a technology and AI perspective, and adapting in sovereign risk and liquidity, you are entering into my wheelhouse. And I actually want my members to use me more. They don't use me enough. And those of you that would like to reach out and have a chance to be a part of it, I am so busy this first quarter. You get digital, you get in person, you get everything. And I'm going to be collaborating with people like Ian, working with families on understanding AI and potentially building, after an analysis and assessment, their own quote unquote AI network. Now, it's important. Ian knows other people as well. I know people. So sometimes we collaboratively build a bit of a dream team and then work together and do the best things for families. Again, now is the time. If you wait 10 years, 15 years, the arbitrage and the edge, honestly, will probably be over. Now is going to be a very, very important time. The future of family offices is absolutely at stake. As a family, as an inheritor, a rising generation, anywhere that you want to use, and as an executive, I promise you, it's just going to be totally different. Forget 10 years. Like now, things are rapidly evolving between right now and the next 18 months. And you need to have that edge in a community where, honestly, at these traditional organizations and thought leaders, you are absolutely not getting it, not getting it. I'm sorry, you're fooling yourself if you think that's the case. So on that note, Ian, I'm going to kick it off to you for a final comment, some of the work that you may be able to do as a consultative relationship, perhaps collectively with me and others. and how those that would like to either follow you or learn more could reach out. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Well, Angelo, thank you so much for having me. It's been a fantastic conversation. As you said, we've wanted to do this for a while, so I'm really happy we got the opportunity. For everybody else, I've devoted an entire career to working on machine learning and AI, and absolutely love these conversations. So absolutely feel free to reach out to me. Easiest one's probably LinkedIn. I'm just Ian P. Cook, as you can see on the screen. Most socials, I'm Ian P. Cook everywhere. There's a website, ianpcook.com, although I need to update that because that was much more of a resume thing than my consultative work. In this world, I love going from, like I mentioned to Angelo, if we could have a whiskey-fueled conversation about what general intelligence
I'm always
is.
good with that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And a cigar I need to add to that, and my audience knows what I mean.
Yeah. All the way down to developing code. So I have, my fingers in code pretty much every single day. I've been a CTO, I've been a developer. So I love going up and down the stack and turning ideas into actual things that you can put your hands on. That really is what animates me the most. So if there's these ideas that I need my own AI network or own AI tools, let's have a chat. Let's talk about how that can get done. This is what I absolutely love to do. If you want to reach out to me and you can't remember the name or can't figure it out, just ping Angelo and I'm sure he'll reach out to me. Would love to have any conversations that people are interested in. I love that Richard Ross was active in the comments. These are the types of things that excite me all the time. So the opportunity to speak has been fantastic. So thank you again to Angelo. And I, really jealous of the trip down to Miami, as I'm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's -2 degrees, and I've got all of my layers on trying to keep warm. So thank you so much.
Well, as someone who spends 90% of his time in Wyoming and New England and Connecticut, the greater New York area, in the winter, we all, I enjoy it more now than ever. So the snow, my audience knows I put on my 10-gallon Stetson, I go outside and I'm feeling the flow. I shoot more videos than ever before, but I got to spend some time in Florida and the warm weather during the winter, even if I could just brag to others that are up here that I'm getting away a little bit. The contrast, I enjoy both. And that's the whole thing. You get too much of any one thing, like playing golf every day, even if you love it, it becomes old after a while. So it's really fortunate to have Ian on. He's a wonderful thought leader. I highly encouraging interacting. And again, if you're a member of my SFO continuity, favorable interaction, introductions, favorable pricing, if it needs to even go to consulting, everything that's going to be beneficial, it's the value added for my relationships and my SFO continuity. And by the way, the word that I was looking for before, very trendy word the last year, is when you hear verbiage like the legacy media. And I definitely believe, maybe I was a part of it, there was a legacy family office world and structure that doesn't work for me. If you want to call me alternative, fine, then I'm alternative. But we all learned about the challenges and bureaucracy in legacy media. And to me, that absolutely is a major, major impact right now in the world of wealth management and in the world of family offices as well. There are more thought leaders out there than you think or They're not always the people that are most obvious to you. And I'm very fortunate to meet them and get to learn from them, even if their experiences are not as much. And by the way, I'm a believer that experiences are somewhat overrated. I want your capability to be high IQ, to be someone who knows how to juggle problems in their head and be creative, and someone who's obsessed and disciplined. To me, those are all more valuable, especially in today's world with AI and information at your fingertips, than quote unquote experience. That does not mean that in certain things, experience is not incredibly valuable. It is. And I'm going to have more programs coming up on that dichotomy and those challenges and opportunities as well. I got so many great subjects coming up, especially for my members in the next couple of months. If I wasn't traveling so much, so those weeks that I travel, unless I do a short video there or an interview, you really just have to join and be a part of it and go in person to these things. And that's where really a lot of the magic happens. It's not just digital, it's the interactivity of in person, getting to know people. And I still think that is very, very valuable. On that note, everyone, I'm Angelo Robles. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone have a great day. And for some of you, look forward to seeing you the week of January 27th in Miami. Thank you. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.